So for step 48, the driver figure, well, you can see that we have to paint up our helmet, we've got to paint up the face, etc., etc. Now, I've already gone ahead and done that. So there are all of the pieces that I've already painted up, and I may paint it a little bit more or do some touch-ups once we've actually built the helmet and face and put it all together. So the hardware we need are these screws here and this nut. So I'm going to set it up and we'll put the helmet and face together and then see if we need to touch up the paint before putting on any of the decals. So let's do what we can for now. So you can see that Z11 has to go into Z2 and it's basically clipped into place. So we're going to put that there, push, and there we go. There is the face inside the helmet. I do like the way that's designed. Very, very cool. So once the face is on, we're going to need to put together a few different pieces. So you can see that inside the back of the helmet, we have a nut that has to go onto there. Just like that. This has to sit there so that you've got the two white pieces facing forward. We've got a visor which has to sit inside the holes on either side of his helmet, just like that. And then we've got to put this on and I guess match the screw, match the nut to get it into that hole there. There we go. Just like that. So then there's a nut for something else to screw into, which basically means at this stage we need to get this screw into the hole and just slowly keep screwing it down and trying to hold everything in place as you're screwing it in. There we go. Wow, interesting. Okay, I'm just going to do another quick tightening. Yeah, that's on. So there is our helmet with our guy in there. Very cool. So once that's done, we then have this piece, which is what's going to be screwed in to those white pieces there. So it's going to sit like that. Very cool. Now, what I've noticed is there's a little bit of black paint that I needed to paint the top, which would have been his hair. So I'm going to have to do that first before we put on the bottom part of his helmet, which is fine. I'll go ahead and do that. So I'll do that now and then I'll come back. So I've gone ahead and painted the hair piece and I've also put on the eyes. I've decided to do that before we put on this bottom part, and I realized I wouldn't mind getting the decals onto this before I screw it down as well. So I've put those on too. Now, one interesting thing is you can see I put on the big eyes. Well, it turns out that in the kit you have two choices. You can actually use these ones, which are slightly smaller, but I decided that, you know, you're barely going to see it, might as well go big. So I've used the big eyes for this. So what we've got left to do is we need to put this part of the helmet onto the rest of this. So obviously we're using these tiny MC5 screws, so we're going to need to turn that around, put that on like that, and then using the smaller screwdriver, we're going to end up having to screw these into place. So I'm going to start it off, but I'm not going to go all the way yet because we want to make sure that these actually are going into the holes properly. Because yes, they are tapping screws, but you're still going to want to make sure, you know, be careful because they're a really small screw. And you don't want to over tighten just in case it strips something out, but this feels okay at the moment. So same thing again, let's make sure this comes forward. Now I'm getting to the end. I'm just going to be a little bit more careful that I don't strip anything out. So it still feels a little loose, so I'm going to tighten this up a bit more. Yeah, that feels right. And that feels right. I'm just going to tighten it just one more little bit here. Yeah. Yeah, so there we go. There is our guy with the helmet. I don't mind that those are stickers because remember I've mentioned before that with the other ones I try to put a really light black dot in the middle for the pupil. This looks more like there's a real person in there. So I kind of like the fact that the eyes are big. And again, you can use the smaller ones, but I'm okay with that. So I'm happy with this as our driver. So now that we have this part of the helmet finished, we only have one more thing to do, which is to put on the other stickers. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll quickly come back and take a look before we move on to the next step. So there we go. The rest of the decals for the helmet are on, and I think this looks super cool. I love the gold paint. I wasn't able to use the spray paint version of it because the Tamiya spray paint's been banned in Canada. But I did find it in the brush style, so I'm happy I was able to replicate this as best I could. So that looks cool. I really like that helmet. So step 48 is complete. So now we're going to move on to step 49, and we're going to attach the driver figure, and I'll pull together all the other pieces that we need for this.